Kyle, it's 6:30.
I think we are ready to go when you are.
Okay. Call to order the regular meeting of the Rio Dell City Council, regular virtual meeting of the Rio Dell City Council. Roll call, please.
Mayor Garnes,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Here.
Councilmember Carter,
Here.
Councilmember Wilson,
Here.
Councilmember Woodall,
Here.
City Manager Knopp,
Here.
Chief of Police Connor,
Here.
Finance Director Dillingham, Community Development Director Caldwell, Water Superintendent Jensen,
Here.
Wastewater Superintendent Taylor,
Here.
and City Clerk Dunham is present. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. There it is. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Ceremonial matters. Proclamation recognizing city employees for their service and dedication to the citizens of Rio Dell throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And I just want to thank, all of the essential employees across the city, across the county. We appreciate everything. We appreciate our volunteer fire department, but this is for our city employees tonight. We want to give a proclamation recognizing city employees for their service and dedication to the citizens of Rio Dell throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas on March 13th, 2020, the President of the United States issued a proclamation declaring the COVID-19 outbreak a national emergency beginning March 1st, 2020, and whereas the Governor of the State of California and the Public Health Officer of the County of Humboldt issued orders to combat the spread of COVID-19, and whereas as a small rural community, we depend on each other for the basic needs and have considered employees of the city of Rio Dell as essential workers during this pandemic. And whereas these employees have continued to do their jobs to ensure the health and safety of our citizens and have kept the critical parts of our economy running during the fight against COVID. And whereas while many of us are told to stay at home, these workers have continued to show up to work day after day to provide essential services to their fellow citizens and our community. And whereas these workers have made significant contributions to protect residents while assuming additional risks to their own health and safety in order to serve the citizens of Rio Dell. Whereas it is very appropriate to honor and express our gratitude to all these individuals who have made and continue to make sacrifices for the sake of the residents of Rio Dell. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Deborah Garnes, Mayor of the City of Rio Dell, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim with humility and gratitude a sincere thank you to our city staff. Thank you, city staff. Sign this day, March 16th, 2020. And I wish I was there in person, and so you can see the sincerity, but maybe you can see me. And we as a council are truly sincere in our gratitude. So thank you very much. Now we were on to public presentations. This is the time for persons who wish to address the council on any matter not on this agenda and over which the council has jurisdiction. As such, a dialogue with the council or staff is not intended or allowed under the Ralph M. Brown Act. Items requiring council actions not listed on this agenda may be placed on the next regular agenda for consideration if the council directs, unless a finding is made by at least 2/3 of the council that the item came up after the agenda was posted and is of an urgency nature requiring immediate action. Please limit comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. So now, do we have any hands raised or emails?
Currently, I see no hands raised.
And I did receive one public comment on that's unrelated to any agenda item, and I'll go ahead and read that.
Thank you.
Okay, artist Dan McCauley's request for an open-ended yearly visit to Rio Dell financed by the city to make metal sculptures is interesting. If the city decides it needs more sculptures, they can be commissioned and purchased. Consider surveying the residents. I doubt there will be much support. Signed, Bruce Cattle, Rio Dell. And that's the only one I received.
Thank you. And I have there anyone called in since while Karen was reading?
No, there's no hands raised.
And we might take a second just to remind folks if they want to raise their hand, to press *9 on their phone if they're calling in. That allows our operator Rosa to identify you for public comment and then call in on you. And then if you're watching on the television or YouTube and want to participate in tonight's meeting, there is a phone number displayed on the screen right now at 1-888-475-4499. And the meeting ID number to access the Zoom council meeting is 987-154-0944. So again, in order to raise your hand, it is *9.
Thank you, City Manager. Just giving it a couple beats to allow anyone who wants to call in. Okay, and I was kind of like counting out, I was counting out how long it would take me to push those digits. Okay. Okay, then we will move on to the consent calendar. Is there anyone, any council member or staff that wishes to pull an item from the consent calendar? Hearing none, are there any hands raised or emails regarding the consent calendar?
Still no hands raised at the moment.
Okay.
No emails received.
Okay, thank you. Then I will ask for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I so move. Woodall.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. Carter.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Carter,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson, you might be muted, Frank.
Who are you asking for?
Wilson, you.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Woodall,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Yes.
Mayor Garnes.
Yes. Motion carries 5-0. Reports and staff communications, City Manager, that's page 24 in your packets.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. So as the council knows very well, over the past couple of years, one of the highest priorities of this council has been street work. And we have, over the last year, accomplished quite a bit over this last construction season. And we are gearing up right now for the summer of 2021. So the Streets project, which is our largest ever general fund funded Streets project is currently out to bid. We are hopeful that everything goes to plan and that we can receive competitive and qualified bids for the project. But this is going to be roughly, $500,000 that the council has authorized in projects that we will be seeking bids for. So there's going to be hopefully quite a bit of street work going on this summer. And as the council also knows, we've adopted a multi-year plan to invest significant amounts of available funding towards streets. So the planning process preliminarily is already beginning for 2022 and how we pull off the proposed projects that the council's listed over a 5-year plan. So that's good news. And then also at the next council meeting, I think we're going to be able to have a quote and a proposal to replace the community garbage receptacles that are throughout town. Council members Carter and Woodall have been working hard on developing a proposal for the council's consideration. We're hoping to bring that back to the council's April 6th meeting. So as the mayor mentioned, the staff report begins on page 24 of your packet. And I'm available and staff is available to answer any questions that the council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. So I will start with the Mayor Pro Tem. Do you have any questions for staff?
Thank you, Mayor Garnes. One question for Tom. When is the bid opening date for the street project?
So it should be, I believe, around April 2nd or 3rd.
Thank you. That's all, Mayor Garnes.
Thank you. Councilmember Carter.
Yeah, I just had one question on the different stops, the data on gender and race for the police, whatever it's called. Anyway, I just was wondering what we do with that data.
So when we start sending data to the Department of Justice, they will log it in, significantly more information than what I put here, and it'll be available to the public through their website.
It's just so people can see. It's just informational.
Exactly. It's supposed to improve transparency, and it's likely that departments will study it to try and determine if if there's a problem in each of these departments.
Okay, thank you. Just wondering.
And I think it's going to be required by DOJ, Department of Justice.
So the Racial and Identity Profiling Act was passed in 2015, and it placed law enforcement agencies into 4 tiers depending upon their size. All of the agencies in Humboldt County are in the last tier, the 4th tiers. They have less than 333 officers. So we have to start collecting data in 2022, and we have to report it by spring of 2023. So the department's trying to get a head start on that and get the bugs worked out before we have to start submitting data, and we hope to start transmitting it to DOJ by the middle of the month, or by the middle of the year, sorry.
Thank you. Is that all, Amanda?
Yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wilson?
Yes, just one short question to Chief Connor. Are you the one that writes the description of the events?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so that's very interesting how the writing is. I won't say entertaining, but pleasurable to read your descriptions.
Well, thank you. And if I can make them slightly humorous at times, I will try to do that.
What particular comment was about the or yielding to Sergeant Bouchain's boot?
That may have been a typo.
Anyway, those are the only questions that I think I currently have at this point.
Thank you. Councilmember Woodall?
Just two questions. I was wondering if you have any idea when the police department vehicles are going to arrive.
Today.
So if you look in the parking lot, there are currently 2 brand new Ford Explorers parked in front of City Hall. They arrived yesterday. Kyle and I went up and he did the paperwork and I just kind of fondled and ogled a little bit.
Well, I didn't even notice them when I was up there today.
Holy moly.
Bad me. And then
They look beautiful.
My other question is just a quick question for the Public Works Department. I noticed, is our riding mower down? I noticed the guys out mowing the triangle today. Three guys out mowing the triangle. I'm just wondering if the riding mower was not operable.
This is Randy and council members. The riding lawnmower is working. We just didn't want to tear up the yard, so we're using the push mowers.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. That's it.
You're welcome. Okay.
Thank you. And I just have a question for a city manager that says, working with Gateway Artists on sign replacement, touch up to the City Hall sign. Could you give us, and this is the longest, it's a very long Gateway Artist sign replacement. Could you give us an update or anything? What you found out?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. So we started about last year to replace the sign. We worked with a sign company that couldn't quite replicate the artist's original design. And after giving them copious amounts of time to correct the situation, we did consult with the artist, and so the artist is now going to be able to help us appropriately replace the sign as it was originally painted and designed by the artist. So the process is just taking a little bit longer. It seemed like a very simple replacement project, and it should have been, but it's one of those things that did not go according to plan. But I think the artist is going to be able to get help us along in this process and get the signs replaced.
Awesome. Thank you so much for staying on top of it. We appreciate it, and thank the artist for stepping in. We appreciate that as well. So are there any questions or hands raised rather, or emails regarding the staffing report?
Currently, there are no hands raised.
And no emails received.
Thank you. Then we will move on to the public special presentations. Our public workshop. And before we start, City Manager, could you go over the call-in information again, please?
Yeah, if Rosa could display it. The most important thing for folks to do is to raise your hand in the Zoom meeting. And so if you're on a phone, you would press *9 to raise your hand to comment. That allows us to call on you and then make sure that you're unmuted to speak. In order to unmute or mute your phone, you would press *6. And again, if you're watching on television right now or on YouTube and you want to call in and comment, the phone numbers are displayed on the left side of your screen, and the meeting ID is 987-154-0944. If you already have Zoom on your laptop or on your cell phone, you would just type in the meeting ID number, and that's a standard number. Every time Rio Dell has a public meeting, it's always going to be that number. So with that, hopefully that was explanatory enough.
Yep. All right, thank you. So our public workshop, we're opening our public workshop for discussion on solid waste and opportunity for mandatory universal collection. The presentation is by Recology Eel River. Linda, welcome. And do I need to throw this back to you, Kyle, first, or?
Yeah, and actually, I'll go ahead and start out. We need to make sure that we have the PowerPoint display here, so if you'll bear with me,
Okay.
we will begin this process. Okay, so that should be displaying. All right, so first off, I do want to thank everybody for being on the call this evening. It's not always easy to attend a public meeting, especially one that is held virtually. We know and understand the challenges with this. We've been dealing with this now for a year, and I promise you we will do everything we can to make this as seamless as possible. But I think this is going to be one of the more well-attended meetings that we have had on Zoom over the past year. And again, the council in discussing this really wanted to make sure that there was good public participation in this process, because it does affect Rio Dell, it affects your neighbors, it affects you, family members, and is an important component of what happens in a city or any kind of semi-urban or rural urban environment. Is garbage collection, utility services, virtually everything that we do produces garbage. We need water services, sanitation services, and this is a big part of that puzzle. So the city council ordered that the every door direct mailer was issued to every resident or every domicile in the city to advise folks of this meeting, to make sure that folks were aware and could participate in this process. So this is really informational. We want to hear your comments, your concerns, both in support and opposition. But what we hope to do primarily is to gather input and hold a second meeting where we then are better able to answer the individual questions that are posed. So this is kind of a two-part step, two workshops where the council this evening is not making any decisions, but we want to hear from the public. We want to hear as staff from the council members. We want to work with our solid waste franchise group, Recology Eel River, to figure out what is possible. So this is by no means a guaranteed project, but it is something that we are looking at in order to comply with various laws, to clean up the community, and to do various other things. So the process really started with the Nuisance Advisory Committee. So the city council formed a nuisance advisory committee through an ordinance. In that ordinance, it's a group of community members, staff members, and council members to discuss nuisance issues in the community and make recommendations to the city council in terms of how we could better address some of the nuisances in the community, whether those are piles of garbage, or whether those are abandoned vehicles, or just general blight, graffiti, that sort of thing in the community. And that's really what the Nuisance Advisory Committee is charged with doing. So back in 2019, the Nuisance Advisory Committee received a presentation, invited Recology Eel River to come and meet with the committee to discuss the concept of universal collection services. And universal collection services, another way to describe it, is mandatory garbage and recycling collection. So the Nuisance Advisory Committee received a briefing from Recology Eel River back in 2019. And the reception from the Nuisance Advisory Committee was supportive of exploring the concept of universal collection in Rio Dell. So one of the major hurdles towards moving in the direction of universal collection is the problems associated with scale, economy of scale. Rio Dell, as we all know, is a small community. There's not a large subscriber base. There's potentially about 1,400 garbage and recycling subscribers in the community. And there's a large capital outlay in order to really change fundamentally how garbage services have been collected in Rio Dell over the past 40 years. So what that means is that we were advised that it would really be cost prohibitive for the city to attempt to do universal collection on its own. That it wouldn't, pencil out, that it would be expensive. The alternative option that was proposed is when other jurisdictions sign on to universal collection for their own reasons, whether mandates or whatnot, that's an opportunity to potentially team up and create a larger scale of economy where the costs are spread across those capital costs, those fixed capital costs are spread across a larger subscriber base. That's really the most efficient way to implement a universal collection service and to do it with partners here. And so I cannot speak for what the city of Fortuna is doing regarding this or our neighbors in Ferndale, but the item is being explored as a manner to deal with a lot of different things for these communities. So in order for Rio Dell really to participate in this, Fortuna will have to move forward. Fortuna can probably do it on its own without really impacting it too much, but just the size of the city of Rio Dell really necessitates us having partners to do it. And so the timeline for this has really been dictated by the needs of other surrounding communities and their timelines to adopt and move this forward. So the city's been, I think, pretty responsive in trying to figure out the most efficient way to implement this program, if that is what the community desires, if that is what the council directs. So again, what is universal collection? Universal collection requires that all households and businesses, all properties have garbage service. So it is mandatory garbage and recycling services. So I described some of the regional efficiencies that apply now for Rio Dell, and I think that that's an important point, that our timeline is, in order to make this as efficient as possible for the community, is really going to be dictated by our partners in trying to implement a new ordinance, the new contract by July 1st. So there are other regulatory drivers that Linda and I will get into, but we do live in the state of California. Garbage has been a major topic for the past 30 plus years. There is a large state bureaucracy called CalRecycle that governs waste in the state of California and has incrementally inched up regulations year after year in order to divert material away from landfills. So no new landfills are being created in California at the moment. And so a lot of the landfills that we use today are facilities that were identified and created really back in the 60s and 70s. And it's been, they have a limited, capacity. So diversion has been a major factor in regulatory efforts, and that includes things like organic waste. So food that ends up in the garbage, recyclable materials, plastics, those sorts of things. That's why we recycle, to divert items away from landfills. I think one of the primary motivators specifically for Rio Dell is the idea of nuisance abatement and trying to create a better environment for folks to live in the community, one that is freer from litter, from trash, freer from health impacts associated with that. So garbage that's piled up in yards and not regularly taken away can attract rodents, mice, and other unsavory creatures that create, a public health threat. And we have certainly received a number of complaints related to that. But I would say that for the city, the number one complaint that we receive on a weekly basis from residents of the community is in one way or another related to garbage, is one way or another related to litter. And so that can be litter piling on private property that impacts neighbors, that impacts view sheds, that creates both visual issues, but also real health consequences associated with it as well. So those are some of the reasons why this is coming forward, why the council's considering this, why the council really wants to hear back from the community about this and about your concerns, to see if there's a way that maybe those concerns can be ameliorated or mitigated in order to make this program work for Rio Dell, which is a unique community. So right now, today, let's do an overview of our services that we currently receive. So Recology Eel River is our current solid waste services provider. They have the franchise for the city of Rio Dell. They also have the franchise for Fortuna and Ferndale, and quite a bit of the county as well. Right now, you can subscribe to garbage collection, municipal solid waste, MSW collection, through Recology Eel River, and that is optional right now. You do not have to have garbage collection services. So some people self-haul, other people may do things that are not necessarily legal with their trash, or families may have an uncle who collects all the garbage for various households and hauls it in. So there's a lot of different methods for people to deal with the garbage. Right now, currently, there's also every other week recycling. So that's EOW, recycling every other week. Right now, currently, Recology does charge for bulky item pickups. You can call Recology if you do have a mattress or couches or something like that that needs to be picked up, and they'll come and pick it up, but they're going to assess a charge. So there are customer provided municipal solid waste containers. So, what you might buy at Ace Hardware, those are physically picked up by Recology employees. And there's also every other week optional organics. So that could be lawn clippings, spring cleaning branches and whatnot that you place in those containers. There are prepaid bags. So if you need a bag that you fill with garbage and then you put out on the street on collection day, you would come to City Hall and purchase those bags. There's also senior discounted prepaid bags as well. And those are used. We do regularly get customers coming in and purchasing those bags. Right now, there's also recycling drop-off behind City Hall. So you may subscribe to just garbage services and then drive your recycling up to City Hall and drop it off in the bins there. And then we also do, as part of the franchise agreement, there is a Mother's Day cleanup, which actually happens the day after, I believe, or before Mother's Day. And that's been sort of an annual tradition, only canceled just due to COVID this last year. But it's a cleanup. Anybody who can load up a truck and drive it over to the school parking lot. They're met by some Recology employees who then sort the garbage. Could be metals, regular household trash, or primarily that service is there to handle just overflows and large bulky items. So all of those services, in addition to the city garbage cans that are out publicly, all of those services are currently paid for by the voluntary subscribers of the system. So out of about 1,400 potential customers in the city of Rio Dell, or properties in the city of Rio Dell, there's only about 700 that actually subscribe to the available service. That's about half, 50% of the available properties actually have a subscribed garbage service. So under the potential move towards universal collection or mandatory garbage and recycling services, the municipal solid waste service subscription would be required of properties. There would be every other week recycling in addition to that. Now, in Eureka, that has had universal collection for some time now, there are included in your subscription are 2 bulky item pickups. So that could be a couch, that could be overflows of garbage, that would be included. So you would call them up on a garbage, prior to the garbage collection day, just let them know your address and where the items need to be picked up. And there would be 2 of those bulky item pickups included in the proposed setup. Recology would provide municipal solid waste and recycling containers. They would need to be standardized. So we could no longer go to Ace Hardware and select different types or sizes or types of cans. They would all be a standardized can within the with various sizes, but that allows the garbage trucks to use an articulating arm to pick up the containers and dump them into the garbage trucks, thereby reducing the driver number from 2, 1 driver and 1 operator, down to 1 who's kind of handling the whole operation with the vehicles. There would be optional organics recycling that would be maintained. And then part of the discussion is, how would we handle discounted rates? So, there could be a 20% discount for senior residents, as there is with the prepaid bags, or the other option that a lot of communities have adopted is the discount for low income. And my understanding is basically it'd be similar to PG&E with their special rates. If you qualify for the PG&E special care rates, you would provide that evidence to the to Recology, and then you'd receive the 20% discount. So one of the other options also with the proposal is cleanup bins that can be deployed at city discretion for projects. For example, when we have volunteers or when we do a river cleanup, we could deploy these cleanup bins down Edwards Drive and have those filled up. They also could be used for code issues, and whatnot to help clean up specific issues that arise. So, you know, so what would be eliminated would be the cleanup, the Mother's Day cleanup, because you would have the bulky item pickups and the and whatnot. So with that, I don't know, Linda, if I skipped anything or missed anything, if you could chime in there and make sure that I covered what needed to get covered in these first two slides.
Sure. No, that's a really good description of the first two slides that are in there. We could go on to the next slide, and I can kind of talk to those proposed services. When you're talking about universal, the first question that people say is, how much is it going to cost? That's the first thing that's on people's minds. And so the first thing we have to do is we have to settle on some assumptions about what the services are going to look like in the future so that we can come up with the costs. And so we're using those proposed systems to estimate what the proposed impact to rates would be. Again, Kyle mentioned that we would be adding 700 additional garbage customer accounts to the systems, which is a 100% increase over what we're currently doing. And that also increases some of our disposal costs as well as what we'd be experiencing from increased organic material, which green waste right now is what we can accept in there, and recycling. So we made some estimations of what the increase for the increased material would cost to the revenue requirements for implementing these programs. Another thing that we took into account was that we were looking at what the length of the contract would be. So just so you know, these are proposed rates, and it's one of the things I checked in for Kyle. It was a question about the rates would become effective when we start doing the services. So we would be looking at having our costs for providing bins and trucks carried over for 10 years and having, you know, whatever time period it is for a time year period for the contract to be able to cover these costs. So how does it look? So if you were at the current rates, somebody who is at the 32-gallon garbage service at the curbside residential, that's the typical can size where you see in areas, most people have that. You'd be looking at $28.59 a month with bi-weekly recycling. So the recycling cans that we're going to be providing to the services here are going to be larger than the ones you currently have. They're currently at 64-gallon. They should be all uniform 96-gallon services that will be picked up every other week, which increases the volume that people are able to put into the system. So if they were to be able to move to a 20-gallon garbage service with bi-weekly recycling, let's just say, their proposed rates would be $24.34 a month. So with the additional services, there's a potential where a person might be able to save $4.25 per month with having the additional recycling and being able to lower the garbage service, their garbage service size. With a customer, to a discount customer, we're estimating that current rates are about $22.83 a month. Now we're basing this on if somebody's doing this weekly, to the proposed rates of $19.47 a month. So that would be a savings to those to a discount or a senior service of $3.36 per month. We heard at the council meeting last time, and we've heard this before, that people feel that self-haul of their garbage service is cheaper than subscribing to garbage service. We ran an analysis, and we looked at 3 months, 3 quarters, and took 3 months, a month out of each quarter of last year, so that we'd have a wide spectrum of what people from the city of Rio Dell are bringing to the Fortuna transfer station. We do track origin there, so we do know. And so we made an estimation of what a customer with, how much the weight that they would be bringing to the transfer station and what on average that they're currently paying from the city of Rio Dell. And each trip going in there is approximately averaging to be about $27.02 per trip. And so we're putting out the current rates that might be what somebody's paying per month if they went once per month for themselves to go to the Fortuna transfer station. If you're comparing that to what a 20-gallon size is at the curbside for weekly recycling, there would be a savings of $2.68 a month. So we thought that that was really good information to consider for folks. So then the next slide shows what all the possible rate adjustments that there are for service sizes that we currently have in the city of Rio Dell and what the proposed rates would be. So you're really doing size per size. There is a slight increase.
Linda,
yes.
Can I interrupt you for just a moment?
Sure.
Your slide the slide's gone really big, so you can't really see what is on it.
Oh,
I don't know.
I'm letting somebody else control me. So I don't know what it means.
Okay.
If you could just put up the slide.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm
No
trying
biggie.
to make this work.
There you go. It's sort of on legal size format. Let me see. There you are. I think, can you see that?
Yes.
You can move your
Right. So what we're doing is we're doing apples per apples rate comparisons here from size to size. And you can see that the rates do go up when you're doing that from the 20-gallon residential size from $1.51 per month to $4.27 per month. Keep in mind that those rates also include those two bulky item pickups. So if a person were to be taking 2 trips to the Fortuna transfer stations, that's $28 over a year's period difference. And so when you're talking about for the difference between a 20 or 32-gallon service and what it would cost you to take your couch or refrigerator to the transfer station, there's still a savings of about $3 over the entire year for that. There is, so we've also put in here for just so that you can see on one slide what the current self-haul is and what the organics program is what we're intending to include as far as charges go. There wasn't a senior discount at the curbside, so you won't see that in the current rates, but you'll see where what we're comparing to is to current self-haul. Those are also the commercial rates, and you can see what the differences are per month for the increased services. The next slide, this is the other question people ask all the time. Well, you know, what are other people paying? So we thought it'd be useful for the public and the council to see what we're proposing for the Rio Dell rates and how that stacks up with other areas that also have universal collection. And you can see that comparatively, $24.34 per month for a 20-gallon can and how that compares with the city of Eureka and the city of Arcata. Mind you, that city of Arcata is quite a bit, the reason why they're a little bit more is that they financed all of their replacement of their city cans through their garbage rates. So we supply those to the city of Eureka anytime there needs to be any exchanges for damaged containers out there, those city cans that Kyla was talking about earlier on in the conversation. And we add those to the rates. We make estimates for the rates about what the replacements are going to be every year for that. And also they have a regularly scheduled commercial and residential area street sweeping system. So those are main drivers for increases to their rates. And also you'll notice in the area of franchise fees, the differences that are paid between the areas. So currently Recology pays and adds to the rates 5% to the city of Rio Dell. The cities of Eureka and Arcata are currently at 9 and 10%. So that is a driver for some of the differences between the rates. So this is gives you kind of a comparison of where you are with the other areas. Oh, and the other thing that I'd also include with the city of Eureka and is that the city of Eureka has weekly recycling, and so does the city of Arcata, but Arcata currently is running under a different kind of green waste collection system. It's piloted right now, and they just have a different way of dealing with the green waste that you probably would take the rest of this evening to explain, but to go into, but this just sort of shows you generally where you are with the other areas. Are there any questions about that before I hand it back over to Kyle? Again, the last thing, okay.
I'm sorry, Linda, go ahead.
Oh, again, I just wanted to say really fast, as nobody was going to ask any questions, is these rates are based on, again, Ferndale and Fortuna going forward as well.
Okay, thank you. In this pause, I will go to council. Are there questions, council? Councilmember Woodall? I'll come back. Councilmember Wilson? I'm
trying to get my thing on through this shared screen thing.
Okay.
Are we unmuted?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, are we going to come back to some questions on like 1383 and some of that other stuff, or is this just about the rates of the bins?
Yes.
You answered yes to two questions.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about 1383. Where we are right now is where you're talking about whether or not we'd have weekly recycling. Did I understand you correctly?
Well, I understood. Right now, we're just talking about the weekly rate pickups.
Right, based on those proposed programs.
That's pretty clear to me, so I don't have any questions on that.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Carter?
No questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor Garnes. One question for Linda. Your estimates are based upon, I would imagine, certain increases in your rolling stock. Over the next decade, how many new articulated arm trucks are you proposing to purchase?
We're looking at getting 4 altogether, but that's for Fortuna, Rio Dell, and Ferndale. And that's where these programs are going to be gaining some efficiencies. We're not, in order to roll out a program by themselves, we would be having to add a $350,000 truck onto Rio Dell itself versus sharing it with the other communities. So we're looking at buying those trucks as well as the toters. As we go back and forth with using the term carts and toters. And those are the biggest pieces of equipment that we would buy for this program. And we would be spreading the cost of that over the 3 communities and over 10 years. And that's the reason why we wouldn't start charging rates until we can start implementing the programs. It does take about 12 to 18 months to get those. So when we get to start talking about SB 1383 with compliance with that regulation, this is one of the 2 activities that takes the longest time. is setting up the collection system, getting trucks ordered. There really isn't a supplier of garbage trucks like a Ford dealership or a Caterpillar or anything like that. So we have to have them specially made.
Thank you very much.
Long answer.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I just have a quick question on when you get the trucks, the articulated trucks, will the second employee be out of a job, or are they going to be trained to drive a truck?
Well, that is a really good question, because as soon as we get an idea of where we're heading with this, the second employee is going to be encouraged to get a commercial license, and we'll be putting them through the training to do that. And between now and when that happens, we'll be, if they don't want to do that, they'll have a choice of other work to do if it becomes available. We're hoping not to have people put out of jobs, but the two-piece people on the truck thing is, you see a guy hanging out in the back of the truck. It's just not the modern way of picking up garbage any longer.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Okay, now I will go to the public. I will also tell staff, if you are on a phone or on your computer, you too can raise your hands and or whatever to ask a question, because this is really, you're part of Rio Dell, so you get to ask questions as well. So I will ask if there are any hands raised or any emails.
Currently, I am not seeing any hands raised.
We did receive 3 public comments by email.
Okay.
If you'd like me to continue, read them now, I can, or at the end, whatever you prefer.
Oh, can you tell if they're related to what, to rates, or related to what's coming?
They're kind of a combination of everything.
Okay, well then we will wait till the end, and then you can.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you,
Okay,
Karen.
sure.
Okay, Linda, back to you.
Okay, and I'll hand it off to Kyle to go on to talk about some of the drivers, to talk more about some of the drivers that go into the reasons why we're going here.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, give me just a moment while I put the PowerPoint back up. And so I'll just kind of recap some of this I discussed at the top of the meeting. One of the council's highest priorities over the past couple of years has really been nuisance abatement, code enforcement, and really, working on trying to create a better environment for the residents of Rio Dell, for the business community, for people who are interested in investing in the community. And those investments can come through, business investments. They can come from potential home buyers in the community. So the focus has been on trying to create an attractive community that leads to a higher level of community pride, of lower crime, and a generally safer and cleaner environment that invites investment, invites people to want to be in Rio Dell, to want to have a business in Rio Dell. And again, the Nuisance Advisory Committee that the council formed has been a strong advocate in terms of nuisance abatement. And I would say we probably would not be here without the Nuisance Advisory Committee really, focusing in on this particular issue and advocating for it. So universal collection poses to significantly reduce illegal dumping. There would be, no reason for folks to accumulate trash, to dump it on the river bar, and then, have to, organize these large cleanups where we're doing pickups of illegal dumped material that can obviously contain dangerous items that are a threat to volunteers who are cleaning them up or city staff who are cleaning them up. Right now, the city has made an investment in a full-time community services officer whose main focus is really on code enforcement and working on those kind of lower level, I would say, issues related to code enforcement issues. Right now, I believe just on Friday, city staff were normally working on regulatory compliance with water and wastewater functions. Were pulled off of those assignments to go and do a garbage cleanup at a residence in the avenues. So spending a good part of a day going in under an abatement warrant to clean up those properties. That's time consuming. It's a major process for a government agency to go and enter onto private property to abate something. It's also expensive. And we've seen some other examples in other communities where some of those abatements potentially cost tens of thousands of dollars to do. So there's certainly a cost associated with folks piling up garbage, and the ability to have that regularly picked up poses the opportunity to really reduce that particular issue. Again, the vast majority of community complaints that the city receives are related to nuisance issues related to garbage, and the recycling containers located behind City Hall are commonly and often abused. And there is a pretty significant amount of non-recyclable material that is regularly dumped at those facilities. So that is also, and that's also an area where we've received a number of complaints. So again, in terms of regional efficiencies, the opportunity to team up with Fortuna and Ferndale and do this as a group really makes it possible for us to move in this direction. It also creates a better equitable collection system for garbage in the sense that our public bins, our programs to pick up bulky waste, are all funded by voluntary subscribers to solid waste services in Rio Dell. So those public services would be more efficiently spread out if there was a larger subscriber base for those services. And then, of course, we talked about the public health and safety issues related to garbage, which, if you're familiar with that, I apologize and feel bad for you. Dealing with mice and rodents from a neighbor who is not dealing with their garbage effectively is a real problem, and it is an issue in various neighborhoods in the city. So there are also regulatory drivers, and I think Linda will get into this a little bit more. And again, all of this really revolves, all of the regulatory drivers, the numbers, the acronyms, all of it's really about the state legislature and the governor over the years working towards diverting recyclable materials and non-trash out of the landfills, getting that material recycled or otherwise reused. And so each of these regulations, every year there's a new one, and each time it clamps down further and further and creates additional requirements for the city. So, for example, for the general public, one of the main ones that communities across California have been grappling with is AB 939. Which requires each city or county to achieve a 50% diversion back by the year 2000. So So in other words, before where everything just went into the trash can and was hauled away, communities were really required to find a way to divert half of that over to recycling or other methods of diverting the waste out of this waste stream. So for example, in Rio Dell, and they've changed the metric for how the AB 939 is complied with. The current standard that Cal Recycle uses is pounds per day. And so Rio Dell, and it's based on the population of the community. So for Rio Dell, we have to achieve a diversion of 2.1 pounds per person in the city per day, 365 days per year. Our last 2019 report showed that we were diverting about 2.2 pounds a day, so just above the threshold. If we fall behind that and go below 2.1, we risk being fined by the state of California, which ultimately drives all the costs up for everybody. So that diversion requirement is changing. Right now there is a 75% goal. It is not in black and white at this point in time, but ultimately it is headed towards a diversion of 75% of the solid waste stream. So obviously the way that we're doing things now is going to have to change if we're ever going to have any hope of achieving that 75% diversion. And so there's also SB 1383 that Linda will get into more detail on that establishes targets to reduce organic waste, which is a pretty significant amount of what ends up in the garbage as food waste, and to achieve those objectives. So it's a very, we're in California, and it's a very, California goes above and beyond minimum federal thresholds for these types of things. And so the laws that are passed in Sacramento have an impact on a community even as small as Rio Dell. And the city is really obligated to develop a strategy, an efficient strategy to try to deal with these issues and lower the amount of material that ultimately ends up in these landfills that will be there for potentially thousands of years. So with that, I think we will turn it back to Linda for this portion of the presentation. I'm trying to figure out how to get the full screen displayed here because I'm having a bit of a problem with the PowerPoint in that it only wants to display part of the screen. So if you could bear with me while I try to figure out exactly what's happening.
Maybe just show it like that, Kyle, if people can see it. You're just getting a little bit of my notes, I think. What is it okay if I start?
Yes, please do.
What you are looking at is a timeline that was taken off of the Cal Recycle website about SB 1383's key implementation dates, where this is the timeline the state is using for implementation dates. This applies to the city of Fortuna at this point. So they're under a tighter timeline than Rio Dell and Ferndale are because of the size of their community. 1383 was passed it was a law that was passed in 2016. It's been in rulemaking until maybe about late fall of last year. They are looking to have the regulations and the implementation of these programs take effect January 1st, 2022. If communities are not in in the position to be able to start supplying a recycling, organics, and garbage system at the curbside. They're supposed to be showing a pathway to compliance to be able to be given more time. Obviously, the County of Humboldt currently does not have a robust organics program. So what we are looking for is to show progress to the state that we're working toward implementing curbside programs for the city of Fortuna. And that's the reason why we're asking the city of Rio Dell and Ferndale to come along while the price is good so that we can share the costs. So the state is, and these are jurisdictional requirements, not from the collection companies. So the regulations will require that local governments take enforcement action to make sure people are complying with the law by January 1st, 2024. That's for the communities that are the size of Fortuna. This will eventually trickle down to the smaller communities, but at least this is going to be able to allow for Rio Dell and Ferndale to be able to get the groundwork and the foundation to be in compliance, so you won't be behind the 8 ball. There's a small little movie that the state put out that's on the YouTube video. That it's a little 3-minute thing that might give you some more understanding about the complexities of this law, because it doesn't just deal with collection. It also deals with other parts of organics outside of collection. So this will give you a good idea of what the entirety of this law is going to be dealing with. It's speaking to climate change in this case, as well as reducing waste in the landfill. So I don't know if you're able to click on it to get it to go, but it's just a 3-minute little thing.
Even though California is flourishing in many ways, it also faces greater challenges than ever due to climate change. Cyclical droughts, intense fire season, and pollution endangers human health. Even though California is flourishing in many ways, we are also facing greater challenges than ever due to climate change. Cyclical droughts, intense fire season, and pollution endangers human health and the environment. In California, we're doing something about it.
Governor Jerry Brown today signed a bill regulating emissions from landfills to fight climate change.
The organics law calls on the state's 40 million residents, its businesses, and every level of government to combat climate change by getting food, green waste, and other organics out of our landfills and get more good food to the 1 in 8 Californians, including the 1 in 5 children who are food insecure. At 23 million tons, organics are by far the largest material type landfills in California each year. Fortunately, yard, food, and other organic waste can be recycled into compost and renewable natural gas. 1383 requires new rules and regulations to achieve a 50% reduction in organic waste disposal by 2020, a 75% reduction by 2025, and actions to make sure 20% of currently disposed edible food is redirected to Californians in need. Enforcement begins once the law takes effect on January 1st, 2022. Achieving these targets demands a new approach and substantial new investments to restructure the waste management system of the world's most CalRecycle began rulemaking immediately after the law's passage in 2016. Jurisdictions should start planning now to meet the law's requirements.
1383 benefits every resident and every business in the state of California. CalRecycle is here to help local governments understand and
Start planning now to connect large food waste generators with your local food recovery organizations to help feed hungry people where you live. Start planning now to expand organic waste collection to all homes and businesses in your area. Use your local capacity to recycle this material. Start planning now for rate changes to fund these efforts, new ordinances for mandatory recycling enforcement, and changes to existing franchise agreements for hauler permits.
some of this is new and some of it requires more than what we've already been doing. But all of it requires planning. Make sure programs are in place by January 1, 2022.
Recycling organic waste is an important part of the state's California will create a more sustainable future, combat climate change, be more Californians, and improve the health of our people and our planet. Cal Recycling is your committed partner in this effort. Get in touch with us to learn more about available support and resources to help you succeed. And talk to your staff about strategies for the next steps for 1383 implementation.
So that's pretty much it in a nutshell, in a quick overview of what that law is going to require. And just one portion of it has to do with waste collection at the curbside. And what they're talking about is trying to mirror your curbside collections to what you have available in your communities to handle that material. And in our case, it's a 3-can system that the state is going to be requiring of jurisdictions that are of the size that fall under their regulations. So that kind of gets us to a slide that I'll just gloss over. That's when the next slide is just it's sort of, you kind of take a look at what a 3-can system looks like. They're also mandating in the law what color the cans are. So which is another reason why we would, well, one reason is because it makes collection more efficient to have our garbage cans, but it's also, it's a future compliance with the law for ourselves and the other communities that are going to be participating in this system. We don't have destinations for a single can system. That's for what is called a dirty MRF. That's when somebody physically goes through the garbage and pulls out all the stuff so it can go off into the different directions. We don't, and the 2-can system is that way as well, dirty MRF and a recycling system. But what all the communities are going toward are a 3-can system, which is garbage recycling and organics, but right now is green waste. So the next slide is talking about a proposed timeline that we want to see about following for the city of Rio Dell, so that we can mirror the timelines for Fortuna primarily. We would have been having a public presentation in their community this week as well, but for other for unforeseen reasons, we weren't able to do it in that community, but we are scheduled to do a presentation much like this one, probably more focused on the regulatory areas for the city of Fortuna on the 24th. Tomorrow night I'll be talking about introducing this concept with the city of Ferndale. We've talked about implementing Universal as early as as late as a year ago. So everyone's been talking about this for quite a while. So this is kind of about where we are with the timeline that we're looking at Rio Dell. We would be doing another meeting, public workshop to address people's concerns or questions that might come out of this, either tonight or later on. Maybe we'll be gathering some more that we can start looking toward resolving at the 20th meeting. And then between the April and June, there would be a lot of energy on our part and with the cities in writing new franchise agreements to comply with the law and to implement these programs, developing the rates further based on anything that we hear from the public and your recommendations, and writing and being helpful in with the city with writing their ordinances for passing of this. So, and then we'd follow the timeline for public notice and ordinance passage. And hopefully once we get to June or July to get contracts amended, then that gives me at the company the green light to start ordering trucks. And so they can start being constructed. So it'll be ready by January 1st, 2023, when we'd have the programs going and when the rates would start. So again, the next slide just talks about, those are some of the considerations for you. And I'll give that to Kyle to take over.
Yeah, so there's a variety of just considerations that the council will want to work out before we get to the ultimately to an amended franchise agreement. If we end up going in that direction, some of those would be the term of the contract. It would need to, at the very least, as Linda's explained, there's capitalization costs with moving in this direction. Have to be at least a 10-year agreement. That's pretty standard length of time for a solid waste franchise agreement. And, you know, it may be beneficial for the other municipalities to have contracts that expire around the same time. That way there is potential for economy down the road of being able to work with our municipal partners to make sure that we're getting the best contracts and long-term agreements possible. So my ultimate recommendation on that would be to see what kind of timeline Fortuna adopts and try to adopt a similar term of contract. One of the other issues is over senior versus low income discounts. Again, these discounts are ultimately funded by the ratepayers. The current setup is for the senior discount on the purchased bags at City Hall. So we can continue to adopt a discount specific to seniors, or what we can do is similar to PG&E, the CARES program, it may be a little bit easier to administer also, would be for bill payers to simply provide their CARES Act bill that shows that they're subscribed in the program, and they would receive that discount. Other services that we've talked about with Linda could include street sweeping services. That's not included in the rates currently. In our discussions with Linda over this and trying to figure out how we could possibly make this work, we run into kind of the same exact problem associated with the garbage trucks themselves. There's a lot of CARB rules, so that's California Air Resources Board rules regarding, you know, diesel engines and the emissions related to those. So you have to, when you purchase these types of equipment, they're more expensive than you would think they would be. So similarly, the street sweeping service would really kind of need to be a group effort. If we did this alone, we would incur all of those capital costs. And so we haven't delved too deeply into the street sweeping situation, just because we know it would significantly add to the cost of the franchise agreement. And so another issue are exclusions. There is some language in the other ordinances that allows for certain properties where it is not practical to have universal collection implemented, say a super long driveway or something like that. There are abilities to apply for an exclusion and then have that vetted and approved through a process with the city. And then, you know, just really anything else that folks can think of on the call. We'll certainly delve into any recommendations or anything like that and come back at the next meeting in April with those more fleshed out in terms of options that we may or may not want to include in an ordinance and in a franchise agreement amendment. So with that, Mayor Garnes, I believe that concludes the PowerPoint presentation. And so if Rosa could put up the guide, I would go one more time over this process. Because I know for a lot of you who are watching or are participating in the Zoom call, this is probably maybe one of your first times on a Zoom call, or certainly on a public meeting Zoom call. So we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to comment. In order to do that, if you're watching on television or if you're watching on YouTube or some other access point, you'd want to call the 1-800 number on the left side of your screen. There's two options in case for whatever reason one of them goes down, and that's 1-888-475-4499. And then the meeting ID code, which we'll keep up on the screen as long as possible, is 987-154-0944, and that'll get you into the room. In order to comment, you will need to press *9 on your phone, or if you're in an app, you just want to click the button that says raise your hand. That allows us to go ahead and call on you and hear your thoughts on the presentation, on the proposal that's before the council. And these comments really do count, because we want to look at them and we want to address each and every single one of the questions and concerns. So with that, again, it's time to raise your hand in *6, and I'll return it to the mayor for the order that Mayor Garth wants to go through, whether we go to the council or to public comment first, but we'll try to leave this up on the screen as long as possible.
Thank you, City Manager. And thank you very much, Linda, for coming and going over these things and explaining them and answering all of our questions. City Clerk, could you read the emails, please?
Certainly. The first one is in favor of mandatory universal collection, and it begins by stating, I support mandatory universal garbage recycling for the city of Rio Dell. Illegal dumping plagues the local river bar and rural roads around Rio Dell. Rodents are attracted to improperly secured waste. This proposal could help to alleviate both problems. It will benefit the health and safety of this community and beyond. There may be need to be exemptions for property that cannot be serviced or reached by recology vehicles, and for those vacant homes undergoing remodeling. Thank you for asking for input. This proposal benefits the community in my view. And it's signed Renata Laughlin, home property owner. So the second one is a little longer, but it's addressed to the city of Rio Dell and city council members. It says, I'm reaching out to you to express my concerns regarding the probable implementation of a mandatory across-the-board garbage and recycling program. I know there are problems at certain properties within the city where owners, tenants allow garbage and other debris to accumulate in mass. Not only does this take away from the aesthetic value of the city, it can also lead to health and environmental issues and public safety concerns. Many municipalities throughout the county and other areas of the country are trying to find solutions to this ongoing problem. I do not have a solution and commend you on your efforts to try and correct this problem. That said, I would like to remind you that this problem only occurs with a small percentage of the properties in the city, whereas many residents, property owners already have solid waste pickup or have found alternative means of managing their garbage. What concerns me is the financial hardship or other hardships this program is likely to put on a portion of the residents, property owners who already have a program in place. To illustrate, I'm referring to those already on a tight budget, or those who are in a low income bracket, or those who live alone and may only generate a small amount of trash per week. Another potential problem pertains to those living in the most remote rural areas of the city, such as Monument Road, Blue Slide Road, or similar neighborhoods. There are many cases where such households will have to cart trash receptacles long distances to pickup points and run the risk of having them knocked over and contents strewed around by scavenging dogs, bear, and other opportunistic wildlife. Our individual situation is unique in itself. Although my wife and I maintain a home in Rio Dell and have for 38 years, most of our retirement time is spent at our second residence in Southern Trinity County. Trinity County has in place an annual solid waste tax, plus we pay an exorbitant per bag fee when we visit the county transfer site. Why should we be required to participate in the Rio Dell mandatory garbage collection program when the minimal amount of trash we generate in Rio Dell gets disposed of in Trinity County. In all fairness, I hope when the city implements this program, and I know this is your intention, that you will take my concerns into consideration and include a mechanism to exempt qualifying homeowners, tenants on a case-by-case basis. Thank you and best regards, Doug Dinsmore. And then the last one is also rather long, and it says to the Rio Dell City Council. I'm a concerned citizen of Rio Dell. I grew up here and came back after going away to school. I do have garbage pickup, but my mother and father, both retired senior citizens, do not. My mother has my brother haul her garbage to the dump every other month, or depending on the season, every 3 months. When she did the math, it turned out she's only paying around $5 a month for trash disposal. If I understood last meeting right, this is mostly to get ahead of California laws down the way. I get that, and I'm all for this, but not in helping the owners of Eel River become the new Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Vanderbilt, or for Humboldt reference, the new Arkley, Pearson, or Carson. There are between 1,200 and 1,600 individual homes and businesses in the city of Rio Dell, and if you charge between $25 and $35 a month, that's $30,000 to $56,000, or an average of $43,000 in just 1 month, and just in Rio Dell alone. An average of $516,000 a year for anyone, anywhere from 10 to 15 years, if I understand average lengths for these type of contracts. That's $516 to $774 million made in just Rio Dell over the length of the contract. I did not do the math for overhead costs due to the fact that there was talk of Fortuna being part of this. If that's the case, they're larger, and anything that's needed for overhead, payroll, or otherwise would be covered there easily. If they're buying new, more automated trucks, then they'll either keep their employees numbers about the same or add or possibly subtract a small number of people. I do not find it reasonable for the people of Rio Dell to be paying higher rates than they already do, seeing as how we are guaranteeing them a lot of new customers, nor do I find it reasonable to be paying their startup costs. I understand they might need some help with collecting the money at the very beginning. It is most likely a lot. But if our council is going to help with that, we citizens should not be paying more. And there should be some kind of maybe once a month option for those that cannot come up with, or even a small can of garbage every other week. I understand that this is something that needs to happen, but Rio Dell already has to pay for an expensive and complicated water and sewage system that the state demanded. We don't need to add even more costs on top of a poor community's shoulders. I'm all for going forward, but I beg the council to not let Eel River Ecology walk all over them, and to be tough negotiators for the people who have put their trust in you. If anyone thinks that Rio Dell doesn't have options, just remember, we've been here since Humboldt County was born. Sure, not as legally recognized city, but we've been through floods and earthquakes, and we'll be here even if California Eel River Ecology don't like us. River rats stick together and take care of their own. Keep this town's trust. Don't roll over for some company who thinks they can make a fortune off of bleeding us dry. Proud Rio Dell River Rat. And that's the end of them. That was a long one. And I don't see any other public comments via email.
Karen.
Thank you.
Karen.
Yes.
Alice.
Hi.
I have a public comment.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Alice.
This is the first time I've gotten on here, so I'm not sure that I've done this right, but I think so. I wanted to, I think it's a great idea, and my concern was going to be the costs for landlords and the costs for tenants during the pandemic. But as I see, it looks like it's not to start until the 1st of January 23. And I hope we're well done with that by then. And so anyways, I support it. I wasn't going to support it so easily, but now that I've been through all this, watching what you've put forth, it sounds great.
Thank you, Alice.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other hands raised, or well, no more emails. Are there any other hands raised?
It does not look like there's any hands raised at the moment.
Okay, then I will go to council questions, and then I'll come back and see if there are hands raised. Okay, Council Member Carter.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes. Right now, I just really want to thank everybody who listened to that presentation, who called in, who wrote emails. You know, this is something that impacts all of us, and I just really appreciate when members of the public show up and give their feedback, and that's a big part of what we're doing here, and we're all on the same team, and sometimes it's nice to remember that. So with that being said, I don't have any questions per se. I just really wanted to thank everybody who called or wrote in.
All right, thank you, Amanda. That was awesome. Councilmember Woodall.
Yes, I have said, am I on this time? Last
Yes,
time
you
I
are.
muted myself.
No, you're on.
Okay. Well, number one, I watched the video with HWMA on SB 1383. Have I got it right? 1383.
Mhm.
And it was really a little bit overwhelming about what's coming down the pipeline with all the recycling coming up. And one of the things they said that the universal collection will check off some of the requirements for us, which would be good. So that would be one positive of that. And then I was wondering, let's see, I've got to get these in order. It seems like I have a jillion questions. I was wondering about the waivers for the small towns, which we are one of them. It seems like we can get several waivers, but at what point, I know at one point we won't be able to have the waivers. At what point would that be?
Want me to answer that, Kyle?
Yeah, I think you would have more experience with the waivers for Eureka and other universal collection entities.
Well, I think what she was asking was for the smaller communities. I think when there's a smaller population areas, like in the county of Humboldt, and you know, like I think that they're going to be looking at voter precinct zones. But the state has already identified Rio Dell, Ferndale, and Blue Lake, and I believe Trinidad as being small enough to be able to qualify for a waiver. But they're going to have to, somebody on your city staff is going to have to apply for it. And they will go through 2-year terms from 2022 on. So I believe they're looking at doing 2 of those consecutively for the smaller communities like Rio Dell and Ferndale and Blue Lake and Trinidad. And then after that, they're going to seek compliance. And if you're not on the road for checking off some of the boxes, from the way I understand it, they'll put you on a corrective action plan. And require it over a certain amount of time. So, and I believe it's about 18 months from there. So you have approximately 6 years, but that's not guaranteed.
No, and it seems overwhelming to do, so we would definitely need to start it at, I think the best is to start it right now. And some of the questions I had, like about what the ordinance would read, my questions are, when they're billing, okay, when they're billing the residents, they will make payments to the waste management or the hauler, but if they don't make payments to them, how is that handled? Do they just shut off service, which would defeat the purpose of universal? And who is responsible to collect it? Is the city responsible to collect the bills?
The way it currently runs with the city of Eureka and Arcata is we bill in 3-month cycles in advance for service. So they have that entire 3 months to pay it, and then it becomes late one day after 3 months. What we do is after, for those areas, if a person hasn't paid their garbage bill for that entire year, what we do is we'll send them notices. We send them notices throughout, whether they're late or not. We'll send notices saying that we'll be if they're not the property owner, we'll be notifying the property owner, because the way that we find our ability to collect the rates is through the lien process. So if we've done all the notification for those areas, what we do is after an interval, and usually when we start a service like this, it's 2 years after we started the service, because you give people plenty of time to get late. And then we'll submit a list of people who are behind, and to the city manager. We'll attempt to collect that money and let him know what the process will be. If they want to dispute it, the list comes to the city council to see it before it goes onto the county recorder. And anybody has the opportunity to dispute the charges. I'll tell you, in my experience with doing that, we work out like 75% of the problems before it gets there, or even before it gets submitted to the county. The last recourse is to put it on people's property bills. But once a person pays their property taxes, that's when Recology gets their payment. It doesn't come until then.
Okay, but the during the time they're not paying, you're still collecting the garbage.
Yes. It's not. We can't interrupt service unless the city has given us direction to do so. There are instances like if a person moves out, they should notify us to let us know that they've moved. It's a vacant property or they're on vacations. We allow for vacation stops and that kind of thing. But even when they get to the end of when we're at the point where we're going to be talking about liens, if somebody notifies us and tells us, I didn't even live there for 6 months, we'll reverse all those charges. We don't charge people for something that they didn't accumulate. But it does becomes the property owner's responsibility. We do in the city of Eureka and Arcata encourage people to include that in their rent if they're the landlords, so that they don't get behind or have it come up as a surprise.
Okay. And in one of the ordinances I was reading in another town, if a house was going to be unoccupied it had to be over 2 months, that they could come in and have not be charged for those 2 months, but then the city would have to charge and make sure that there was no occupancy. So would there be something like that where somebody could come in and, the house is going to be occupied for this long and they would be able to not be charged for those months?
Well, the drivers keep a log of what services are out and what aren't out, and the requirement especially is important in universal service. So that, we'll say, like, if we'll have a log if somebody hasn't been there for a while. Usually the drivers will notice if a residence is occupied and then let us know so that we can contact the occupant to get them to start service in their name or in their landlord's name. That's how we find out about it. The drivers are our eyes and ears.
Okay. And then just want to make sure at the very end, if there is no payment, it goes on the property owner. It will be the property owner's responsibility because the lien will be put on the property.
Yes.
Okay.
After with the council approval.
Okay. Another thing is, did I get it right that we will all have three cans, the recycling, the regular garbage, and the organic when it starts? Or will we be able to pick whether to have?
What we're proposing right now is to start out with recycling and garbage. Green waste will be an optional service every other week. What we're finding is like maybe about a third of the people participate in that, but at least that lays a foundation for having it ready to go once there is a system to be able to take organic waste. So then at that point, it will become universal, and the green waste cans will all be adapted to do food waste, and we'll be giving them to everyone, including commercial businesses.
Will all the cans be the same size, or will you still be able to pick like a 32 size can or a 20? Will they all be the same size at that point?
Garbage is the size is by choice. Recycling and green waste comes in a 96-gallon tote. It's kind of difficult to get all these different sizes because the vendor of those totes only sell them in 100 can lots, and we don't have a lot of space to store them, so it's hard to predict where people are going to go with that.
Okay. Now this is a question I was asked, and I'm going to ask it like he said. He wants to know why, if we're going to double, if we have 50% of people getting it now and we're going to have 100% of the town having it, why the price will go up. He thought that maybe that since more people will be paying into it, it should be less. That was his question.
Yeah, more trucks.
Well, actually, the increase, he's correct. The economy of scale is in effect with the rate increase. If you had more people participating in the system right now, the rate increase would have been a lot more to implement these programs. What we're proposing to do, and I like the question from earlier from the written question, was we're going to be really transparent with how we arrive at the rate. We're going to line out what the costs are for providing the programs and how we're figuring how the costs how they're going to line out for Kyle and his staff to look at, and for you as well. Those are based on the assumptions that we outlined earlier, and we're going to be lining out what those costs are, so you can see how much margin Recology makes on that. As some of you may or may not know, about 40% of your garbage bill goes toward disposal. That's just for how much we have to pay to have it transported and landfilled outside of this county. So we're actually in this rate application are suggesting that there's about a 10% margin for Recology on collection, but we're not charging that on disposal or the recycling processing fee. So it's only actually turns out to we're able to make about 6% per return on that. We're going to be real clear. I think that's really important for communities like Rio Dell to see that. So when the time comes and you're going to compare this to what maybe somebody else may propose to you, you can see where their costs are derived to see if they're in line with what is done, so you haven't had that in the past, and I celebrate it that we're able to do that for Rio Dell.
Well, thank you. And my last comment is that some of the people that self-haul and say that they get rid of the garbage once a month or even longer than that. Kyle, am I right that the city ordinance says you have to get rid of your garbage once a week? Would you know?
That a current ordinance says that?
Yeah. Maybe Kevin would know.
I don't know specifically, but obviously when you have food products or edible items for rodents, those really do need to be regularly picked up and disposed of. If you're holding on to garbage items and placing it outside, it easily creates a vector issue if you hold on to that stuff really any longer than a week.
I'll add that state law requires that it be removed every 7 days.
Okay, thank you. And for right now, that's the end of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Woodall. I'm going to come to you, Frank. I just want a point of clarification, if I could, Linda. So So if a property owner, if a property owner has property, has a renter, and then the renter moves out, and then the property is vacant for just 3 months, let's just say. Is there an exclusion? Do you come in and say there is no one there? Is there some way to not have to pay the non-existent garbage fee for those 3 months? Is there like a form, or and that was just, I wasn't sure. I think that's what Julie was asking, but I'm not sure. But
well, if normally a property owner will tell us if it's going to be vacant and to put the service on hold.
Okay.
If they've forgotten to do it, because we all know how stressful it is to move and to sell a piece of property, and they've forgotten to do it, we do fall back on what the drivers, the information that the garbage truck drivers are giving us. They'll put information in where there's no can out. So later on, if a property owner gets a bill that they think they shouldn't get and they contact us, we can confirm that they weren't there.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wilson.
Thank you. A lot of the questions, my questions have been answered. One is if I understood Linda correctly on when they go to the 1383 organic food waste, you said that will be in that will be in the same tote or bin as the garbage waste. Is that correct?
It will be in the same tote. Once they get with organic collections is implemented, it will go in the green tote. It will go in the optional tote right now that people will have the option to get right now, where we'd be collecting green waste as an optional service. Once we go to organics collection, all the food will go into that green tote, recycling in the blue, and whatever is not organic will be in the gray tote. And that's where the potential for people to reduce sizes even further.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. My one big concern, I guess, or question, I guess, probably relates into how the city makes up the ordinance, is on the exemption side of this that was mentioned by a couple of public comments. And I know a call that I received was down that lines, because there's areas, like Rio Vista, up Blue Slide, different ones where they're, because of the rural nature of Rio Dell, it's probably not real practical that they be able to get the totes down to a collection point. And so my view is generally people that would go down and ask for an exemption or file for some kind of exemption form would be more of the responsible nature than ones that I think that we're dealing with the nuisance problem that just don't have anything done. I'm not obviously on the ground doing that, so I don't know, but I think that we need to work into our ordinance an adequate way to have legitimate exemptions, because I don't believe there's going to be a huge number of them, but they're going to be for the ones that can't do it, that need them, it'll be a big deal. I think other than that, the other ones we were asking, I believe city manager was asking for the council to make it to give direction on tonight, was the franchise just time frame, and there was I think some of the stuff about the discount rates, but some of that, again, we're kind of waiting for the other cities to see what they do to see how that affects the overall cost in relationship to our franchise agreement. So those are, I guess, the extent of my comments.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wilson. And I just wondered, I have the question of, we talk about, I'm sorry, did I already come to you, Mayor Pro Tem?
No, you haven't, but I'm
Then,
ready to.
well, then you go for it.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes.
Excuse me.
We've lived in Rio Dell for 42 years, and for 42 years, my memory serves me correct, we've had garbage service. We have a rental house behind our house. For 42 years, I put their garbage and our garbage in one can, and I put their recycle and our recycle in one tub. And we paid like it's one property. Is that going to change?
That's not an unfrequent circumstance in the universal collection system, where people will share containers. Especially if you guys are on one parcel.
Essentially, it looks like one parcel. It is 2 tax lots, but it looks like one parcel.
Yeah, if some kind of mistake, because we get our information from usually from the APN number information, but if somebody gets a bill for something that they feel that they shouldn't get, we'll be probably straightening out all that stuff probably in the first year of the services, you know, for those shared services and that kind of thing.
Thank you very much, Linda. You know, as far as you know, duration, I think you know, a 10-year franchise agreement would be the minimum that the city wanted to get involved in, and looking forward to you know, ironing out all the other financial equities for so that we don't create hardships for the low income or the elderly. Thank you very much, Mayor Garnes.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and sorry, I almost went past you. And my question is actually about seniors versus low income, because it's stated seniors versus low income, not seniors and low income. So if that could be addressed.
Well, here was the answer to that. In some communities, when they have a senior discount, some seniors have are well off.
Right,
And
absolutely.
because you're 65, they're getting a discount. There's some people who have low income issues that aren't related to their age or fixed in, and so that's the reason why we go there. So it's
Okay.
not based on age. It's more about, you know, what they can
Income.
afford.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. So are there any hands raised or any emails come in while we were having council questions?
Sorry, there is one hand raised. Currently they're muted, but if the person with the phone ending in 3084 will be willing to talk when you're ready, Mayor, they're ready.
Well, welcome.
Hello.
84.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, and if you could just state your name, that would be great.
I'm Patrick Knight. I live in Rio Dell, and I would like the City Council to consider the mandatory universal garbage collection. I believe it would help clean up some of the nuisance properties in town. I've had the experience of living next to a nuisance property. They burned trash and had multiple broken down cars on the property. I ended up with a rodent infestation under my home and would get headaches from breathing the toxic fumes from their fires. I think everything the city can do to minimize visual blight will help encourage new businesses and home buyers to invest in our community. And with that, I relinquish my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes.
There is another person with their hand raised, Michelle.
Go ahead, Michelle. Please state your name.
Hi, I'm Michelle, and I'm a homeowner in Rio Dell, and I currently have my home rented. My question is, what if someone was to request the recycling bin, how would that be charged? Would that be charged to the house or to the resident? Because recycling wouldn't be mandatory, correct?
It would come with the service. It's bundled in the rate.
So you would get the garbage can and the recycling bin?
Right.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And are there any more hands raised?
Currently, there seems to be no more hands raised.
Okay.
Deborah, can I
Yes.
ask another question?
Absolutely.
Okay. Our franchise agreement right now is up in 2026. At what point before that time would we renegotiate? Would it be soon, or would it be closer to when the services would start?
So I'll jump in there. We would need to renegotiate and do an amendment prior to July 1st, according to the timeline
Oh, July 1st of this year.
of this year.
Oh, and I was going to say one thing about the senior citizen discount, where it'd probably be better to go with low income. I know one year we were trying to do a senior citizen discount for water, and our attorney said that you do that because it would be a gift of public funds. So I think it'd be better to just go with the lower income thing. That's it. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Are there any more questions or hands raised?
Still no hands raised.
Okay, then, and hearing no questions from the council, I think that I will thank you, Linda, so very much for being here and explaining and answering all the questions, and bring the public workshop to a close.
And Mayor Garnes, if I could just
Yes.
add one more quick comment, and I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the workshop. The PowerPoint that was presented earlier is up on the city's website. So under the latest news section, right on the top is a button for the universal collection proposal. On that part of the page is the PowerPoint that was presented tonight.
Thank you very much, City Manager. And so now I will bring the public workshop to a close. Thank you, Linda, for being here.
See you in April.
All right. So and now we will move on to presentation update of the Eel River Sustainable Groundwater Management Plan. Page 33 in your packet.
Mayor Garnes, if I might, I would suggest a 5-minute recess before we
Oh,
dive into that.
Absolutely. We will take a 5-minute recess. We will be back here at, what time is it now? 8:38.
Kyle, are you there? Can you hear me?
I am, yeah.
I just wanted to let you know that Kevin was unable to log in. He had only one bar on his phone or something, and so we kept trying to get him in, and it was his problem, not ours. Anyway, he suggested that we either have the first reading of the ordinance, and then he can answer questions during the second reading, or to continue it to the next meeting. He said either option would be fine as long as it's okay with the council. So I just wanted to let you know that's what's going on.
Yeah, we might as well just continue it. It's just not time sensitive.
Yeah, it's not really. So, okay, sounds good. I just wanted to let you know.
I heard that, Kyle.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. What happened to the gate?
Nothing. It's gonna get chopped up. Are you okay if I cut a piece?
Oh, my gate.
I'm fine with that idea. You gotta do it. You gotta do it. Just don't make any squealing noises.
Oh, we got to cut his head off.
Oh, I'm good. I'll be waiting a little bit longer.
Got to cut his head off.
Well, his ear's gonna be.
Oh,
one ear.
Deaf. Going to Sydney land. Deaf in one ear, can't hear out the other.
Don't forget your sweater, wherever it is.
It's right here.
Okay.
I know. I want. Oh, what time is it?
I don't know that answer. I should. I can almost see the clock, but not quite. 8:36. 8:36.
Okay, it's 8:37 on my clock.
Oh.
Okay. I think we're back. We're back. Is everybody back with me?
Yeah.
All right. We had a call in from our community development director, and we are going to, he's having computer signal issues. So we're going to continue the update on the Eel River Sustainable Groundwater Management Plan until next.
It's actually, Deborah, it's, I think we
Oh,
can
it's
go
the
ahead.
ordinance. It's the dedication.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, item J1 will be just continued to the next meeting, or excuse me,
K1. Okay, so now we will continue then with the presentation and update on the Eel River Sustainable Groundwater Management Plan. City Manager.
All right, thank you, Mayor Garnes, members of the council. The staff has been, monitoring this situation and attending a group of stakeholder workshop meetings over the past 5 years or so related to this legislative change from the state of California regulating groundwater in the Eel River Valley Basin. So we do have Summer Doherty, who's been extremely patient as we've gone through a little over 2-hour council meeting so far, discussing universal collection. So I'm going to go ahead, and if Summer is still on the line, I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to her. Summer works for the County Department of Public Works, and who is leading this this effort for this Eel River Valley Basin. And Summer, I'm going to go ahead and load the PowerPoint you sent me last week, unless you have an updated one. And
sure, if you'd like, or I'm happy to share my screen, if that's so we can just flip through the slides ourselves.
I think Rosa can enable you to share, and then we can have you run it.
Okay. I believe I can.
Welcome, Summer. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Can you see the screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for that introduction, Kyle, and thanks for having us here tonight. Thank you, Mayor Garnes and Council. I'm here tonight with Jack Rice. He's our accounting consultant with Western Resource Strategies. He's assisting the county in stakeholder outreach and engagement and the development of the GSP. And so first, as Kyle had said, your staff has been engaged in this process with the county for several years. And also recently, Randy Jensen has been working with us to provide information on groundwater pumping and waste discharge and data collection just to support the project overall. So the purpose of our meeting tonight is to provide a brief overview of the project, including information about the California Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, also known as SGMA. And we'll also talk a bit about the work that has been completed by the county to date, work that we're working on currently to develop the Eel River to bring the Eel River groundwater basin into compliance with SGMA, and then next steps for completing the Eel River Valley groundwater sustainability plan, and of course any questions that you may have during that time. So at this time, I'm going to pass this off to Jack Rice, our consultant.
Good evening, Mayor Garnes and members of the council. Thank you. We're going to give a really brief overview, assuming everybody's reaching saturation point for one evening. So thank you. I'm just going to orient you really quickly to the geography of the basin and also the background of the law. So the map you're looking at right now shows what the basin is. It was defined by the Department of Water Resources a number of years ago, and it's based on alluvial geology. Next slide, sir. So the law, this is another state requirement. It was passed by the legislature in 2014. Basically, the purpose is to ensure groundwater remains sustainable. That's defined by saying that essentially groundwater pumping is not causing undesirable results. The law is set up so you implement it locally. That's the goal, to implement it locally, but there is a state backstop if the local efforts are not sufficient. The process simply is that the step one is to form a groundwater sustainability agency. That's been done. The county is that agency. The step two is to develop the groundwater sustainability plan. That's what we're in the middle of right now. And then step three going on into the future will be to implement that groundwater sustainability plan. Next slide. So where are we, what we've done so far? So for the first 5 years, really the county responded quickly after SGMA, which is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, was passed in 2014. The county set up a Eel River working group that Kyle mentioned they've been part of and following. They received a grant to collect data, and the county developed an alternative to a groundwater sustainability plan. Ultimately, that was not approved by the department, but it has established a basis to develop the GSP. So right now, the agency has been formed about a year ago, I guess, May of 2020. The Groundwater Sustainability Agency was formed by the county. The county received nearly a $2 million grant from the Department of Water Resources, and we're in the middle of developing the groundwater sustainability plan. I'll turn it back over to Summer to give an update on where we are currently.
So currently, the project team is conducting stakeholder outreach and engagement to provide information about SGMA and the process for completing the Eel River Valley GSP, or Groundwater Sustainability Plan. And we'll discuss some options for future engagement at a later, here towards the end of the presentation. So the intent of the data collection is to fill data gaps and support development of a basin water budget. This includes installing 23 groundwater monitoring wells entirely within the county road right-of-way, installing flow meters on 6 irrigation wells to understand applied groundwater volumes in the basin, installation of the Department of Water Resources CIMAS station. So that's essentially a weather station. And that was installed actually in 2018 in the kind of central Ferndale Valley. And then also monitoring groundwater elevations, water quality, saltwater content through the year, and measuring stream flows throughout the year. We're looking closely at the lower reaches of the Eel River and Van Dusen rivers to identify sensitive areas that could be vulnerable to excessive groundwater pumping. And finally, the project team is developing a sophisticated computer model to describe the movement of groundwater, to describe surface water and groundwater interactions, and to describe how these interactions change throughout the year and under different circumstances. We'll be sharing that model information as it becomes, as it's developed. So looking at the big picture, there are three big questions that frame our work. The first question is, does pumping affect river flows during the summer and fall? If the answer is yes, then we need to understand how much. We also need to understand if pumping is causing a significant and unreasonable impact on the beneficial uses of interconnected surface waters. The second key question is, does pumping affect the intrusion of salt water into the aquifer along the coastline? If yes, is that effect significant and unreasonable? Then finally, SGMA requires us to answer the question, what is sustainable yield of the groundwater basin? In other words, how much groundwater can be pumped without causing undesirable results? Under SGMA, we need to have the data and fundamental tools to address these questions. And really at this point, I would say it's a little too early to determine the basin's level of sustainability and if any management actions will be warranted. Those considerations will come later in the process after the data is collected, the analysis is performed, and the criteria is developed. So this leads us to the next steps and the timeline for completing the groundwater sustainability plan.
So our next steps, this chart summarizes a number of different activities. Really, to even simplify that further, there's three things going on. We're continuing to collect data and do technical work. Thank you to the City of Rio Dell who allowed access to wells to measure water levels, and also for data on groundwater pumping and waste discharge. That's helpful to creating the model. So we'll continue to do that technical work, continue to do stakeholder outreach and engagement like we are this evening, and other opportunities wherever they may occur. And of course, developing the groundwater sustainability plan itself that must be submitted. That plan has to be submitted to the Department of Water Resources by the end of January in 2022. So there's a lot of work to be done, and the process will move quite rapidly. You can go to the next slide. These are just a list of the involvement opportunities. We put them up here for the community to look at. Essentially, if you can reach out to us anyway, to Summer particularly, we'll go to the next slide. Summer, your email will be there. You can email Summer and get added to a list. You can also go to humboldtgroundwater.com and it'll take you to the county website where there's a lot more information. That was super fast. It's a super complicated area of law and policy, but I think we'll just open it up for questions if there are any.
Thank you, Summer and Jack. Thank you both. I will go to open it up to council. Councilmember Wilson. I'll come back to Councilmember Wilson. Councilmember Carter.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes. Thank you also for being here for this presentation. I am very interested in this. I feel like I need to digest it a little bit and maybe poke around on the website. So thank you for your contact information. And yeah, just thanks for being here. This is interesting stuff. I'm curious to see what happens with this.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, thank you, Amanda. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
No comment at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Woodall.
Yeah, just one question that may seem kind of silly, but I know we have wells in the city, but we also get our water from the river, and it comes underground under the river. Would that be considered groundwater when we're getting it from the river?
So that's
That's a
part
really
of
good que-
looking at the surface water and groundwater how they're connected, and how pumping groundwater directly impacts the flow of surface water. And in the modeling and the data collection, we'll be able to better understand how those interconnect and how they impact each other. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And again, thank you both for being here. I don't have any questions at this moment. Are there any hands raised or emails?
Currently, there are no hands raised.
And I'm sorry, Councilmember Wilson, I don't know if you had a mute issue, but now I'm coming back to you.
Yes, I had a mute issue.
Okay.
My only question was that you noted on your time frame that we would need to drill monitoring wells. Weren't we using some of our wells at Dalton for monitoring, or are these just additional wells we need to add?
Yes, so actually, we've been working with Randy Jensen and your Public Works for several years. Each year we conduct, or twice a year, the county has been conducting groundwater elevation monitoring. And during those months or those times a year, it's usually in April and October of each year, each city provides their groundwater elevation data. And then this year, to support the development of the groundwater sustainability plan, we've asked for some additional data to help support, understand the water budget in the basin. So Randy's actually been instrumental in providing that information and supporting the process. And we will be out again next month to do that groundwater monitoring. So not only are we doing that with cities, but we're monitoring several private irrigation wells within the basin, city wells, service district wells, and a few of the Department of Water Resource monitoring wells.
All right, I'll take your word for it. My something's locking up here on me, so thank you for your response.
Deborah, you're muted.
I'm not muted. I'm just something's locking up.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know what's going on.
Thank you. Okay, there's still no hands raised.
That is correct. There are still no hands raised.
Okay, and no emails. So, okay, well, thank you both for your update, and thank you for being here. We appreciate it, and we'll look forward to asking you more questions when we can sort them out in our brains.
Thanks for having us. Feel free to reach out to us at any time with questions, and we'll keep you up to date on the process and engage for future input as data comes out. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Now we will move on to approve council appointment to the Wildwood Avenue Sculpture Committee. So do I need to toss that to you, or can I just get to it, City Manager? We have a vacancy. We have the vacancy of the alternate vacancy on the Sculpture Committee. So that is what we are being asked to appoint. I would be happy to do it, but if someone else would really has a burn to do it, I'm willing to, step aside. Anybody? So I guess I'll appoint me then. Everyone's good with that. Is everyone good with that? Okay, thank you, Amanda, for the thumbs up. So is that all we need there, City Manager?
Yes, and what we'll do with item K1 continued, we can move on to the next item after that.
Okay, thank you. So we will now move on, as I stated right after the break, and City Manager stated, item K1, the introduction and first reading of ordinance 3842-021 will be continued to our next meeting. So now we will move on to council reports and communications. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Garnes. A couple weeks ago, the Last Chance Trade Stakeholders Group had a Zoom meeting and setting metrics to try to decide which alternates or options to move forward on and which to move back from. And it was a very productive meeting, and we will have a all groups meeting in April. That is, we are the stakeholders group that I'm a member of through HCOG is just one of 4 separate groups. And we're going to try to hold a meeting of all of the 4 groups, which probably has 60, 70 people in it. It's going to be a pretty big Zoom meeting. But what came out of the meeting, and I'll editorialize just a little bit, is that the tunnel option is looking much more attractive, and the other options, whatever they might be, are looking much less attractive. So I suspect that at our April meeting, we may be able to get rid of a few options and narrow it down to maybe just a couple options. So that's the end of my report. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Carter.
Oh, I thought you were probably saying my name, but didn't know. Thank you, Mayor Garnes. I didn't have any big committee meetings since the last time. We've had a couple local ad hocs for the garbage collection and the chamber kiosks. But I did get to go on a ride along with our community service officer, Jolene. It was very telling. It was really interesting. It was fun. And she's sure wonderful and really good at what she does, and we're lucky to have her, and I look forward to doing it again. That and nuisance committees tomorrow.
All right. All right. Thank you. Councilmember Woodall.
Okay. I went and did it to the fire department monthly meeting, and it's the first time I've been since I've been elected. One of the things I wanted to mention is they gave me some of their statistics, and I'm just going to read them because they really are busy people. For January, they had a total of 69 calls, medical aid 35, public arrest 5, 1 fire, false alarms 9, fire debris 1, fire in a vehicle 1, hazard conditions 9, traffic collisions 3, traffic collisions well, that one's where they go to help Fortuna, and that was 1, tech rescue 1, and meetings and drills 2. And there was 69 calls in January. I won't go ahead and read the ones for February, but it's the same sort of thing, and it was 46 calls. These guys are kept busy, and most of us know it because we hear the sirens going a lot now. They also talked about a community emergency response team that they're going to look at, and I'm going to keep track of that because it sounds interesting, so I'm going to find out more about that. We had our nuisance abatement committee meeting last month, right after the city council meeting the next day, and it went really well. We're really going after a lot of the nuisances, and I'm real happy how things are progressing on that. And with that, I want to thank Jim Brickley. He's going to be on the nuisance abatement committee meeting and committee, and I think he'll be a really good member. And I think that's it. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson.
Yes, I had a HWMA meeting and we talked about the draft budget. One of the primary things on the draft budget is they're retiring their long-term debt is going to end in, I think, November. And so that allows them to keep their tipping fees at no increase, which they've done for 5 years. So their rates aren't going to go up in Eureka for generally household waste and whatever else they're doing. They're not going to increase those tipping fees apparently. So that's good news. That's all I had to report.
Thank you. And I had a league division meeting on Friday, and it went smoothly. One thing I did learn is that Fortuna is now having study groups on our community workshops on cannabis. So they're looking. They went and they toured Arcata and Eureka, and now they're having. They haven't had them yet, but they are planning on having public workshops to decide what they want to do in that arena. I want to just thank you guys, the Nuisance Committee and Jolene, and you guys are doing a great job and very much appreciated. And again, just thank staff, thank city staff for everything they've been doing. It is greatly appreciated. And with that, I think we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved by Johnson.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Good night, everybody. We are adjourned until Tuesday, April 6th. Have a good evening.
You too. Bye.